Is now a good time to purchase a home with the median home price rising to a new record high of $364,000? Should you buy now or should you wait? In today's video, we're going to take a look at the key housing market statistics of nearly 400 metros across the United States. We're going to take a look at what's happening in those markets, what's driving housing prices. We're going to take a look at inventory, how fast homes are selling, so that you can make an informed decision as a buyer whether or not now is a good time to buy a home. At the same time, we're going to take a look at interest rates. We're going to talk about what the Fed is planning, and then we're also going to talk about what's happening in Ukraine. Are the tensions in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine going to change the housing market? Because it is already having an impact, and we're going to talk about that in today's video as well. My name is Jeb Smith. I'm a real estate broker here in Southern California. My goal with this video is to inform you, to provide you with information so that if you're planning on buying a home or selling a home, you have the information to make the right decision. So do me a favor, if you find any value in this content at all, hit the thumbs up. Feel free to share it with a friend, and feel free to also subscribe if you want to stay updated on everything real estate related. Now, I started the video by talking about the new record home price in the United States. The median home price has risen to $363,975. That's up nearly 33% from 2020. And at the same time, we've seen the monthly mortgage payment associated with that median home price rise nearly 23% year over year. In fact, it's up 36% from back in 2020. Why? Because home prices have gone up, and at the same time, interest rates have also risen. Here in Orange County, where I'm located, I recently read an article that said the cost of the same home nearly a year ago is 26% more expensive to own that property. So affordability is starting to become a question. Home prices are going crazy, and we're seeing interest rates going back and forth. So how do you determine whether or not it's a good time to buy a home? Stay tuned, because we're going to talk about that in more detail so that you can make the right decision for yourself. Now, to get started, I want to talk about what's happening in the housing market. Why are we seeing this increase in the median home price? Why are we seeing such an increase in demand? We've seen pending home sales down nearly 5% from January to December. So from December to January, it went down nearly 5.6%. But at the same time, we're hearing how home prices are continuing to increase. Buyer demand is crazy. There's multiple offers on a lot of properties, and it's because the supply of homes listings are down nearly 24.1% year over year, to a new all-time low of 456,000 homes across the United States. That would put inventory down nearly 50% since back in 2020. So there's not a lot of property out there for people to choose from, which means those buyers out there looking for the right home have competition. They're competing against other buyers, and those buyers might have more down payment. They might have more flexibility on what they're looking for with regards to a home. They might be an all-cash offer because maybe they sold their home here in the state of California with appreciation going crazy. They said, you know what? We're done with California. We're going to move to the Midwest, or we're going to move to the South, and we're going to take all of our money and we're going to buy a house cash. So your competition might be cash. It might be a pension fund. It might be a millennial, a move-up buyer, a move-down buyer. What I'm getting at here is there's a lot of competition in the housing market at the moment. A lot of people are home buyers. And because there's not a lot of inventory to choose from, all of these buyers are essentially bidding on the same properties. I used this analogy the other day in another video where I said, if there were 5 homes in a neighborhood and there were 5 buyers in that neighborhood, essentially all 5 buyers would be able to buy a home. Now, take that same scenario and there's only 1 house in that neighborhood and there's 5 buyers. In that case, there's 5 buyers bidding on the same property. That's essentially what's happening across the United States. But that 5 buyers might be 20 or 50. I recently sold a home here in Irvine, California that had 22 offers in just over a day and a half. Probably could have had 50 if I had just held it open a couple more days. So the demand out there is crazy. And, while pending home sales shows a decline, pending home sales is actually declining because there's a lack of inventory to choose from. People can't buy homes that aren't available, and therefore the numbers are going to reflect less homes going into escrow just because there's no options out there. As inventory increases here in the spring, which it typically does, you're likely to see more homes for these buyers to choose from. Pending home sales will likely, correct itself a little bit. You're less likely to see these month-over-month declines during the spring because inventory is likely to increase. But at the same time, you've got a lot of different factors driving why people are buying homes. Like I mentioned a moment ago, millennials, still the largest percentage of home buyers to ever enter the housing market at one time, becoming that prime buying age of 33 years old. And that's going to continue to happen over the next couple of years. So you have these millennials that are stepping in to that time of their life when, they're getting married, they're having kids. It's the right time for them to start looking at becoming homeowners. And at the same time, the people that are selling those homes to millennials, because typically millennials are, or any first-time home buyer, they're typically buying entry-level homes. Now, depending on your market, that entry-level home could be $100,000, or here in Southern California where I am, that entry-level home could be $500,000, $700,000, or in Huntington Beach where I am, nearly $1 million. So depending on where you are across the country, that entry-level home is going to be a little bit different. But what I'm getting at here is the first-time home buyers are typically buying that entry-level home. And then the person selling that entry-level home is moving up and buying another property. And then the person selling that property is typically buying something else, or maybe they're downsizing. Maybe kids are off to college. They no longer need the bigger property. They're downsizing. So you have all these different factors playing into why people are buying homes. And that's why competition remains strong out there. Now, we've seen interest rates go from nearly 3% upwards of 4% over the last 6 weeks or so. And at the same time, you have the Fed coming out saying that they're going to start to raise the Fed funds rate. And because they didn't do it soon enough, we saw a lot of volatility in the housing market during the first 5 to 6 weeks of the year. Because the Fed didn't adjust interest rates soon enough, inflation was starting to get out of control. Everybody was wondering, is the Fed going to act? Are they going to do what is necessary in order to tame inflation? And because they hadn't, and there was no real security in what they were going to do, there was a lot of volatility in the market, and interest rates started to rise, and we were sitting there around 4%. And then we had tensions between Russia and the Ukraine, and as that started to unfold, we saw people start to buy bonds, which brought interest rates down a little bit. And we saw interest rates retract about 0.3%, somewhere to around 3.625%. And every day, the market was adjusting up and down. And then at the same time, the Fed basically came out and said, we're more or less going to do a 0.25% hike in March. Now, some people out there thought they might go as high as 0.5%, but the Fed's come out and said they're going to do a 0.25%. But they're leaving the door open for larger adjustments down the road. And they even mentioned the tension in Ukraine as one of the factors in what they're doing, because that issue over there, if you will, it's bigger than an issue, but it is definitely an issue, could cause additional increases with regards to inflation, which could create more of an issue. And the Fed doesn't want to go too far too fast, and so they've essentially set the bar at what they're going to do, and that calmed the market a little bit. So now we've seen interest rates pull back, which could continue to put stress on the housing market. If interest rates stay low, really that only adds fuel to the fire, because what a lot of people out there wanted to see is interest rates go up enough where it slowed buyer demand, and therefore housing supply was able to build, giving buyers more options and hopefully slowing down housing prices. But at the moment, what we've seen is even with the 4% interest rates out there, the market has still been moving full steam ahead. So this pullback in rates gives buyers that opportunity to continue purchase without any real increase in monthly payment or any stress on their affordability level. And with that, I think you're going to see demand continue to be very strong. Now that we've gotten through that, I want to take a little bit of time here and talk about the key housing statistics of 400 top metros across the United States. In fact, it's a little bit more than 400. This data comes from Redfin, and it's good data. It's good data to know if you're a buyer out there, if you're a seller, what's actually happening in the housing market. Now, we talked about what's driving home prices. It's the lack of supply. Right? We said, housing supply was down nearly 24.1% to its lowest level ever. Across the United States, its lowest level ever. And we've talked about demand being very strong because of interest rates being low. That's one of the factors, and demand remains strong as well because there's not a lot of inventory, which is also a driving factor in why housing prices continue to rise. But what's actually happening with regards to days on market? What's actually happening with regards to price drops? How many price drops are we seeing across the United States? That sort of thing. Because that's important if you're out there making offers to know where homes are selling, what you need to do in order to present a strong offer. And we'll also talk about some of that here in just a minute. But I do want to start with talking about 44% of homes sold above the list price, which is an astounding number when you're looking across the United States. It sold for 100.8% of the list price, so nearly 101% of the list price. So if you had a $500,000 home, the average home sold for $505,000. And for many of you out there looking, you already know this because you're putting in bids. I have you commenting on my videos, sending me messages saying, I'm going way above the asking price and I'm doing all these crazy things and I'm not even getting a counteroffer. And earlier I mentioned the property here in Irvine, what had 22 offers. That property sold for $250,000 above the asking price. And the asking price was $850,000. That's 30% more than the asking price. And at the same time, they bought the home nearly 18 months ago for $735,000. Didn't really do any major upgrades in the home, maybe $15,000, and they sold it for $1.1 million. That's 50% increase over that period of time, which is a crazy, crazy number. And at the same time, the average home is going into escrow 26 days on average across the United States. Now here where I am locally, it's actually a lot less than that. It's around 16 days the average home's going into escrow. But across the US, 26 days. That's why I have clients reach out to me saying, hey, look, I want to see a property, and it's been 4 or 5 days, and by the time I call on that property, they already have multiple offers. They're not, doing any additional showings or whatever. So if you're out there looking at homes and you want to be able to make offers on them, you need to see them as they come on. And that doesn't mean you need to rush out there and buy something. It just means if you're looking in most markets across the United States at the moment, things are moving very fast. So you've got to be able to move at the speed of the market, which means, something comes on the market, you need to see it within the first day or two. Otherwise, you're probably not going to have an opportunity. With that said, 58% of homes are going under contract within 2 weeks, and 45% are going into contract within 1 week. So again, as I mentioned, things are moving very, very fast. So if you're considering looking at homes, just make sure you're looking at them as soon as they come on the market so that you don't miss out. Now, real estate is local, right? So depending on where you are, things might be doing a little bit differently than what I'm talking here, but I'm talking about, 400 of the top metros across the United States. So chances are, regardless of where you are, your housing market is pretty crazy. But I often have people saying, I'm seeing huge price drops and, in my market, I'm seeing homes reduced all the time. There's just homes sitting. Well, the latest data shows that only 3% of homes are actually seeing price drops across the United States. So the majority of homes out there aren't seeing big price reductions. They're not even seeing a reduction at all. In fact, the only homes that are really seeing price reductions are the ones that shot for the moon to start with, the ones that were way overpriced to start. Otherwise, you're not really having to adjust your price because, again, the majority of homes, 58% of homes, are going into escrow within the first 2 weeks. So what should you do if you're considering buying a home right now? Well, you need to be pre-approved. You need to make sure you've gone through the pre-approval process. Now, I talk about this all the time, but I want to take it one step further. Something you may do instead of just being pre-approved is you might have, the lender, see if the lender can actually have your file underwritten. See if they can actually go through the full underwriting process outside of having an appraisal or having a property address on it. That way you have a stronger offer up front. But that's only step one. After you've been pre-approved, you need to make sure that you're not making irrational decisions. You're not buying because of FOMO. You're buying for the right reasons. You don't want to stretch yourself on the housing payment, right? You want to be comfortable every month. That's another key takeaway here. You want to have money in the bank, probably 6-8 months of reserves of your housing payment, just so that you're not stretched, just so that if you do lose your job or something happens in the economy again, you're not, pressured or you're back against the wall and having to make irrational decisions. And the most important one here is you want to have time. You want to have a time horizon, 5, 7, 10 years. 10 years is probably ideal. I often talk about the housing market from 2007, 2008, the last housing crash, if you will. If you bought a house in 2006 at the top of the market, which I did, by the way, and I can speak, in detail about this, but in 2006, buying a house, it took about 10 years. 2016, 2017, those homes were back at what, people paid for them back in 2006. Now, the goal with a home isn't just to break even, right? Ideally, you want to be able, to get that appreciation over time. But if you have that longer term time horizon, the reason I'm mentioning it here is because if you do, you're not going to have the losses. If you're looking to buy for 2 or 3 years, gain the appreciation that you've been hearing on the news, turn around, sell your property, buy something else. We're at all-time highs in most markets across the United States, and affordability is coming into question across a lot of these markets. So while I don't believe a crash is going to happen, I do believe some sort of pullback, some sort of sideways movement is necessary. We need it. I'm a real estate agent saying that we need a slowdown in the housing market. Now, with that being said, you just need to have that longer term time horizon and be buying for the right reasons, right? Buying because it's the right time in your life. Again, you have money in the bank, all of these things. So that's what you need to consider when buying a house. But if you're still watching this, wondering, why all of this craziness is happening, I go through it in more detail in this video. So do me a favor, check that out. But for now, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate the support. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.